Welcome to One Big Boat. We're all in this together. A show focused on people and organizations whose work is making a true difference in people's lives. Today, we welcome Amarelli Gutierrez Oliver, Executive Director of REACH.
We work with people who have experienced violence in their lives, particularly in relationships.
She's on board to talk about where victims of domestic violence and workplace harassment can go for help. That's next on One Big Boat. We're all in this together. So I first learned about REACH through the Charles River Regional Chamber, which does a great job with chambers, nonprofits rather, and they really focus on nonprofits making a difference like REACH. But when I first saw REACH in the logo, I wasn't sure what it was. And so what is it?
Wonderful, thank you. So we work with people who have experienced violence in their lives, particularly in relationships. And REACH stands for Refuge, Education, Advocacy, Change, and new is H for Hope. We just completed our strategic planning for the next 3 years. So if you go to our website, you can learn more about our new vision, mission, and our values.
People would think, okay, it's the black eye, right?
Yeah.
But it's so much more than that, right, when it comes to domestic violence?
It is. I think when someone thinks about domestic violence, they tend to have an image already, like the black eye, and they normally will think, oh, you know, it's like a wife and a husband situation, and there's a black eye and there's violence. But it does go beyond that. It's actually about relationships and how sometimes they can show up unhealthy. Sometimes that starts with simple things like the way they are treating you emotionally, controlling factors around you like your finances. You could be in a home and be with a partner and not have control of any of your finances. They control your check, what comes in, what goes out, and how much you get to spend. And that doesn't always get reported. About 99% of survivors experience financial abuse, which doesn't always show up. Instead, what we focus on is that physical part, but it starts way before that.
Yeah, and the numbers are pretty high. It's like 1 in 3, and that's men and women.
Yes.
In Massachusetts, right?
Yes.
And I mean, I did a little research, and Massachusetts fields 76,000 calls annually. So you're busy.
We are very busy. We are one of many specific domestic violence organizations throughout the state. We participate as part of a membership through our state coalition called Jane Doe Inc. So most of us will partner one way or another to make sure that we are providing as much as we can to communities and giving them as much access as possible.
Yeah, and Jane Doe Inc., that people can just go to janedoe.org.
Yes.
And would they find you there too?
Yeah, they're listed, all the different organizations. Most people will go to what the state hotline, which is called SafeLink. They'll hit that first if they're not aware of what's around in their community. Once they call that number, that person will answer and say, let's see where you are, if it feels safe to say where you are. These are the different organizations where you live that you could speak to and get more support. And from there, they'll connect them to REACH. There are other organizations in our area that also do similar work. We all do it a little differently, but we're pretty much open to support anyone as they call.
And with all that need, you have 8 rooms, I believe, for emergency shelter?
Yes. So the shelter system is very interesting in the sense that there aren't enough specific shelters that focus on survivors who are fleeing domestic violence. We happen to have one. It does have 8 rooms, which will welcome an individual or a family. They are allowed to stay there as long as they need to until they feel ready and safe to move to the next thing. That could be an apartment, a house they want to buy, whatever it is. They receive everything from case management to support, one-on-one counseling, connections, referrals, anything that they're going to need, including their basic needs like food, clothing, all of that is provided for them.
And you also have programs in case a person doesn't want to leave. So I'd love to know about that. Maybe explain, because somebody might be saying, well, why wouldn't you want to leave that situation?
Yeah, that is actually a very, very popular question. I think when we think about violence, we think get out of the situation, but it's so much more complex than that. So think about like if you have a partner, a friend, a sister, a mother, and they have been affected by violence in their home, and that person has complete control over everything, it's not that easy to leave. So sometimes what you need is a partner, an advocacy place like ours who can partner with you and help you make those choices. And what I mean by that is we give you those options, but you get to decide what's in your best interest and what is safe. For some people, leaving right away is actually higher risk. What that means is if their abuser, let's say, is extremely violent and they have weapons in the home, they're not going to be able to leave right away safely. So instead, they're going to work with an advocate on safety places, how to gather all important documents like passports, birth certificates for themselves and their children, figuring out, is there a safe place for you to go to and not have to return? Is there a job that you can take later to continue, your healing journey? So there are different ways of working with this, but anyone coming in will decide what's best for them. And that could mean going to court and filing a restraining order, or it might not. It might mean, I actually am not ready to leave at all. I know it isn't safe or healthy, but I want to learn how to stay safely. Then that's what we talk about. How do you stay in that relation safely, even though there's violence around you? How do you keep yourself safe or your kids safe? And then we'll work that way instead.
And when these calls come in, who handles them, and how hard is it not just to try to give advice?
Oh, that's hard. Yeah, it's in our nature, right? The first thing we want to do is tell someone what to do because we know more. But we do a lot of training and a lot of events and partnerships with other people. And we need to remember that we don't know everything that's happening in that situation. And if we give them the advice, we might be actually causing more harm. We might place them in a situation that is extremely unsafe. So we have to let them make those choices. The advocates are all trained. They will handle the situations as it comes, and they will do their best to provide options. Now, I think you've heard that there's a lot happening this past year in our climate with fundings being cut and slashed. That impacts how much we can do to support survivors. We don't do it alone. We do it in partnership with a lot of people, including this place, and getting the word out. We depend on those partnerships to allow access for a survivor. And let's say if we say there is this housing place that could give you an apartment and you can apply. If that housing place loses their funding and closes the door, that's one less thing that survivor will have access to. And then they're stuck with, okay, I can't go here, I can't go here, I can't go here, where do I go? So that's where it gets really sticky for an advocate. And we work really hard to give them the space that they need as an employee to process that out. Because we're not there to wear a red cape. We're there to kind of share the information and then stand with them. But ultimately, the survivor has a decision to make, and we just support that decision.
So what does community-based advocacy mean for you?
It means that we are in the community and we are literally partnering with our communities to find the choices that are best for them. We do not tell them what to do, but we do a lot of education. We do try to explain that if we want this to stop, we need to do it together collectively, not independently from each other. It means that we are going into schools. A clear example would be most people that have kids in school, sometimes the schools will send out a resource guide. And they list all the important information like mental health hotlines and parenting hotlines. But how many of them actually have domestic violence hotlines on them? Actually, a lot of them don't. And if we're talking about stats and it's 1 in 3, that's a lot of people not having access to those hotlines that could really use it. So it starts as something as simple as that, and that is what community advocacy is. It's going in there and giving the information as much as possible, creating that access point for survivors to know, we believe you, we know something's going on, here are some options. Let's talk about how you can work towards being safe in that situation or not, depending on what you want. It's putting the power back to the survivor when it was already taken from the person that's harming them.
There's so many interesting things you guys do, and I did find that the PAVE program is that you're actually going in and talking to teens. And how important is that?
Extremely. It's how we change things. We actually have an amazing person that works for Reach that does a lot of work with the teens. This is a program that Reach has had before I even arrived to Reach. And they've done so much prevention work in the schools. But they get to work with the students, and the students become actual leaders in their own schools and actually get to teach other students about having healthy relationships. And that's where it starts. They get to leave with the info. And I want to share a quick story of that. There was an employee that used to work for us before they moved on to greater things, but they were actually in a PAVE program themselves. And then one day decided to come work for Reach and do some of the same work. I think that is just beautiful and amazing, but they left with all that information. And what that creates is it prevents that student from later not knowing what those red flags are. And red flags are things that sometimes we miss because we think about a black eye and physical, not the other pieces before it. So these students get to learn all of these different ways, but it's a lot easier for someone who's a teenager to hear from another teenager that this is not okay. They're not going to listen to me. Like that old lady, she does not know what she's talking about, but they'll listen to their peer.
I've seen your bio. You do know what you're talking about. You guys were one of the first in the state to recognize males and the LGBTQ plus community.
Yes.
Is that still underrepresented, do you think?
I do think so. I think with what's happened this past year, it actually makes it even harder and riskier for this population to actually receive the support they need. I do believe that as far as confidential emergency shelter specific to survivors, there's still work to be done, but most of them don't necessarily say, oh, you can't come into my shelter because you're a man. We are now getting better at understanding that relationship violence can impact anyone, regardless of where you're from, what you look like, how you identify. It could happen to anyone. So with that said, it is good to keep those doors open, but it's also good for leaders to invest in their teams to make sure that they're aware of how to proceed.
Coming up,
We're always talking about what is a healthy relationship, and that's what I like to focus on the most.
giving people tools to avoid future conflicts. One of the populations we have not talked about, and it's a pretty important population, are the children.
Yes.
How does, how do you deal with them? I mean, I think the stats are like for every parent, like if you take in 300 parents, you're dealing with 600 kids, basically, right?
It's more common than you think, and I actually have a passion. The reason I'm in this work is actually because of the children. So by trade, I went to school for therapy. I wanted to be a clinician, and that's how I started my work. And what I saw happen is that most of the kiddos that I provided therapy to were not doing great. They would do great in their goals, 3 steps back. And the reason was domestic violence. So I went into that field and learned that when a child is embraced by a healthy environment, they can thrive. And the only way to do that is to get involved in this field. So the children are the reason that I do this work, but I'm not the only one. I think my team knows it, our communities know it, we have to invest. That's where prevention and education are so important. The more they know, the more red flags they can identify, the more they can say what's going on, the easier it is for them to not fall into that pattern. Then there's the other piece of what do you do with a family that comes in that's been impacted with a child that's witnessed it? In our program, we do have an incredible clinician who does individual work specifically with children who have been impacted by domestic violence. The beauty of it is that we're able to bridge that gap. In Mass, we are fortunate to be able to let people apply for benefits and they can receive therapy in that way, but there's still a gap where there are some people that don't qualify for any benefits, but yet their children still need therapy. They still need to work through what they've witnessed. And that's where this gap comes in and where this clinician steps forward. So those are the ones that are getting referred, and those are the ones that she sees, those that are not making those buckets to receive that support. And then they work through, there's different sessions that they do, different support groups that are provided, but they actually get to voice what they felt. And it's in a way where it's safe, and they realize, wow, I'm not the only kid that this happened to. You mean like you went through that too. So I'm not crazy. Like this was not okay for me. And they get to talk about that with her, and she holds that space for them, which is quite incredible to see.
And the other thing that you're trying to prevent is learned behavior.
Correct.
So later in life.
Right. So we're learning about what is healthy relationship, and that's pretty much, I think, whether I have a team in prevention or community advocacy or in shelter, we're always talking about what is a healthy relationship, and that's what I like to focus on the most. Not that using the term domestic violence isn't important, it is, but I prefer to focus on healthy relationships. People can gravitate that a little bit easier. And when we highlight what is a healthy relationship, what does that look like, people can understand and say, oh, you mean that I can't just like punch the wall when I'm mad? Why? Let's talk about why that might not be the best choice. Let's talk about anger is healthy, but how do you deliver anger? How do you share your anger? How do you express your anger? Are there healthy ways of doing that? And you talk through that. And that is also helping to stop those patterns as they get bigger.
It may not be within reach, but is there an organization out there that you may partner with or know of that works with abusers? Maybe we've done work with the home base program, and you get post-traumatic stress. You get things, obviously alcohol plays a role and stuff like that, and learned behaviors. So you don't want to just say this person is a horrible person for the rest of their life. Yeah. How do you rehabilitate them?
So that's tricky. There aren't a lot of programs in the state of Mass that offer that. There are some that are funded by our state that focus solely on working with abusers. So I've been in the field for so long, and I remember anyone who's an abuser that would go to court automatically would be given anger management. It's not about anger. It really isn't. It's about control. And so now that's shifted, where now what you're given is, okay, you need to go to intimate partner violence abuse education. Or something to that extent. And there are some organizations that have that. And so they get referred to that organization. And then there are specific classes that they take to learn about their pattern of abuse. And they're held accountable for those patterns, which then shifts their mindset about what it could look like.
Yeah. There's so much when somebody comes to you that they need, that can be helped with. And obviously Reach or one organization is not going to handle all of it. How do you know what organizations, you're working in your business, right? But you also need to know about all these other organizations. How is that done? Is it done through like Chamber of Commerce's? Do you guys all have like a monthly phone call or something, like a big Zoom call? What do you offer,
That's a great question. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of us that overlap, and Reach serves over 27 different cities and towns. So we overlap with a lot of other nonprofits specifically for domestic sexual violence. For the Metro West area, we do meet collaboratively. There's a collaboration with the hospital that kind of spearheads that, and we talk about how we interconnect and how we can provide support in different ways. But we all have our uniqueness. So for example, Reach's demographic varies depending on the city and town. And we have a high demographic specific to, let's say, Spanish speaking or even Haitian Creole, for example. But we don't necessarily have an attorney, right? Our partners next door, which is like the second step, they have an entire trauma-informed attorney. So in that sense, we partner with them and we say, hey, we've got a case. This is what's going on. Can we do something here? Can we transfer this case there? Can we talk to you about this particular client and their family? And then they look to see if that is something they can take on. That's their expertise right now that I'm highlighting. But there are other ways as well. There is other partners that might only focus on specific cultures that we might not have the language. So we'll reach out to them and say, I have someone from, let's say, Asian background. We don't speak it. We really don't know what to do here. They'll call them up and they'll talk and they'll try to figure out how to support the family together.
Yeah. When you're talking to somebody who is dealing with domestic violence, I'll go back to our home base. Their model is combat veterans talk to combat veterans because they're the only one that knows that, right? So do you get that with a domestic, somebody who's going through domestic abuse? If they're talking to somebody who's never been through it, is it like, you don't know my story?
That's a great question. What I can tell you, at least for our organization and others, is that many of us that join organizations like this have a background. What that means is we have lived experience in this, and we are survivors ourselves. So that helps because then we understand what that would look like for someone coming in. We do have groups sometimes that are led by survivors, or someone who is a survivor that has experienced it and then can hold it. But we don't necessarily need to have someone with that background to provide that support. And when questioned, the advocates are trained on how to support that question, because sometimes it's more about them not feeling understood or supported. So there is a way to go around that and say, it sounds like what you're feeling is that perhaps you think I might not believe or understand. So let's talk about what that means for you. And it's kind of sharing in that space to get those doubts out. And that makes the person feel a little bit better because they're like, oh, okay. Yeah, this is my issue, is that I've been told I'm a liar for like the last 10 years. And here you are, like half my age. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. So there's that connection has to happen. Once the connection is there, they feel a little bit better about the situation.
This might be putting you a little bit on the spot,
Sure.
and I apologize. But if 1 in 3 people in the state are experiencing some forms of abuse, whether it's physical or it's mental, whatever. If you suspect that somebody is being abused, and it's not the black eye, but there's just certain red flags, how would you start that conversation?
For one, you would never do it in front of anyone. It would be done independently. And I've actually have been through that. I had an employee that I had suspected, and it was very difficult. And I had said, let's do a one-on-one and let's talk. And because of the field we worked in, we had a discussion. It helps if you have a relationship with the person because it's easier to ask the question. So in this case, there was a relationship, but there's also the power dynamic, right? They're my employee, I'm their supervisor, so it looks a little different. So we did have a conversation, and I am very, they know me to be very direct, but warm in the way that I ask the question. So I asked and said, I've noticed a few things. I've noticed you not eating as much. I noticed that you were really sad. I've noticed you being late. But I also remember that, a few months ago, you had mentioned that there were some problems at home. And I'm just curious if there's anything that you need from me. Do you need support from me? And you don't need to tell me anything at all. We have this particular organization, we have EAP. You can call them. You don't have to say a word to me. You have the opportunity to access everything that anyone else would need to access, confidentiality, all of it. In this case, the employee chose to share what was happening. So then we just then did what we needed to do to support them, using EAP, using the system, getting them into housing, all of that worked. But we kept everything very confidential, so no one else knew what was going on. And we made the opportunities available for them when they needed the flexibility.
This is our 3rd year doing this, and we've interviewed a lot of organizations that are like yours, or in need and helping those victims, if you will. And how do you raise money in this field? I mean, it's not like puppies kind of thing. Oh, look how cute those puppies are. Let's give money to that. How do you raise money? And specifically, if people have a bunch of money and they want to give it to you, how are they going to give it to you?
Thank you. That is actually a great question. Sometimes it's easier to raise money for cute dogs and children because you can put their faces everywhere. For the work that we do, safety is utmost, number one, and that usually means that everyone coming to us needs to pretty much remain anonymous unless they waive privilege. So we can't really put those pictures out there, but we do it in many different ways. One of them is we have our biggest fundraiser coming up April 9th, which is our gala. I love this event because it offers a little bit of education, but it also allows everyone coming to learn about what REACH can do for the communities and why they should support an organization like ours. We have specific survivors who are well past what happened in their trauma. And what that means is that they've joined a group called Survivor Speakers Bureau. They work intimately with 2 advocates that work really hard to get them ready to do a speech at a gala. This is something that they want to do. They feel empowered by it to share their story. So at our gala, they share, this is what happened, and this is how REACH helped me, and this is why I can do what I can do now. And that usually helps a lot because I think it puts that human piece to it, not just numbers, but people get to see like this could actually be someone that you know.
Yeah.
And it does trigger a lot of people sometimes. So we do have advocates everywhere, just in case someone does feel triggered, so that we are accommodating and helping them through that if that happens. But that's our biggest one. The other one is you can go to our website and we have a donation page. You can donate anything, time, in kind. In kind could be like, for example, this, you could say, hey, we'll do a free video for Reach that you can put at your gala. We're happy to do that. That would be like in kind. Those things help. In addition, gift cards. We have our holiday program. That's how we provide gift cards to survivors and gifts. People donate those and we give them right out. And then we also have our state funders, Department of Public Health and Massachusetts Office of Victim Assistance. Those are our two big ones, and they provide a lot of support financially so that our advocates can do the work that they do every day.
And how do they find you?
Reachma.org.
Thank you for coming in, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
One Big Boat is a production of Last Minute Productions Incorporated. This episode was produced by me, Jay Dobeck. Ethan Gallo was sound engineer. Jim Johnson provided production support. And Ryan Machewski was our show editor. And Joanne Pilata is the production coordinator.